ask the President about President Xi from China potentially attending or not attending. We have reports saying that he's not expected to attend the G20 summit. Does that complicate the plans to try to facilitate a meeting between President Biden and President Xi? Do you now anticipate that kind of a meeting would more likely take place at the APEC meeting in San Francisco? And have you had any communication with the Chinese government about whether he would be attending that meeting?
So as it relates to his attendance, President Xi's attendance to G20, I would leave that to to his spokesperson to answer that question, not for me to answer. Look, the president has said multiple times that he is looking forward to continuing his engagement and conversation with President Xi. I don't have anything to preview as to when that's going to happen. But look, this is, I'll just let the president's words stand for himself. He spoke about it during his press conference at Camp David. You heard him speak of it just moments ago. He's looking forward to having that conversation, continuing that ongoing engagement. As far as President Xi's participation or attendance, that's just really for his government to speak to.
Just following on from that, Secretary Raimondo had a longish trip there. She was in multiple cities and spoke multiple times. I know you were asked about this uninvestable comment, but just looking back, would you assess the outcome of her meetings? She said that she spoke about needing to draw a hard line on some of the issues. I mean, do you feel like these visits by cabinet members have been successful, or is the U.S.-Chinese relationship still in trouble?
So I'll say this, and she's been speaking to these last couple of days. I think she's been doing interviews. I saw her, I believe, just moments ago on MSNBC doing an interview on this. And so I would certainly, she had the experience, so I would certainly let her speak to her trip. But I'll say this, no president has put the United States, and you've heard us say this many times, in a stronger position to outcompete China than President Biden, and managing, and I think she has said this too in her interviews, managing that intense competition requires intense diplomacy. That's what you've been seeing from this administration. That's what you've been seeing from these events. And we have never viewed these trips as about deliverables or particular policy outcomes. We see this as it being incredibly important to have those in conversations, to make sure we have those diplomatic conversations, and they are going to be intense. And that's okay. That is part of this process. As far as it relates to her trip, I'm going to let the Department of Commerce speak directly to that. She's been very vocal, as I said, has done a couple of interviews. I know she had a media availability, I believe not yesterday, the day before, when she was in China, so certainly would point you to that. But again, this is about intense diplomacy. We understand this. That's what competition requires. That's what it means to manage these types of relationships. We welcome it, and we think it has been important to move forward in that direction.
On China,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Karine. So still on China, they just published this new map that includes territories of Taiwan, India, Malaysia, Philippines. We know that the president will be in New Delhi and in Hanoi. The vice president will be in Jakarta meeting with ASEAN leaders. What can we expect from them on this issue of territorial disputes, and how forward-leaning would they be?
So a couple things on his trip in Hanoi. Since day one, the administration, we have focused on rebuilding and investing in our allies and partners, right, throughout the world, and especially within the Indo-Pacific. You saw that most recently with the trilateral that he held at Camp David, a historic meeting there. As the United States looks to deepen our ties with the region, Vietnam is going to be a key partner. And so the deliverables that will be announced as part of this visit will reflect both the breadth and also the depth of that relationship. As you know, we try not to get ahead of this president as these trips are upcoming. As it relates to the vice president, as you just mentioned, she's going to be going to Jakarta. Will be a continuation of her work as well. She's been a partner in this when it comes to strengthening our partnership with ASEAN nations on maritime security in the South China Sea. The vice president has spoken extensively throughout the Indo-Pacific about the importance of international rules and norms, and you can expect that conversation and that kind of approach to continue on her trip as well. She has spent significant time working on these issues with leaders from Southeast Asia. You can expect the Vice President to discuss the South China Sea as well throughout her meetings in Jakarta. A couple of things: she will reaffirm our support for the freedom of the seas, peaceful resolution of disputes, and adherence of international law, including freedom of navigation. She will advance our work with ASEAN partners to preserve martial law, and she will make clear peace and stability in the South China Sea is vital to the entire world. Again, not going to get ahead of that specific engagement, but it is consistent and it is a continuation of what her work has been, as she's clearly in partnership with this president as we move forward in the Indo-Pacific.
Specifically say whether the president or the vice president would discuss specifically about this new Chinese map?
Look, I'm not going to get ahead of that. I just laid out what we have been working towards, right? Deepening that relationship, which is incredibly vital, that Indo-Pacific relationship. So it's certainly going to be a continuation of that. Those trips are upcoming, and so once we have more to discuss and lay out and read out, we certainly will do that. But look, we look forward to these types of diplomatic conversations, and again, deepening those important, critical relationships that the president has been leading on since the beginning of his administration. Go ahead, Ed.
Should we anticipate an on-camera briefing with Jake or someone about the trip beforehand?
Yes, you can anticipate, as we normally do, Ed. That is something that we do ahead of a trip. So.